I see, Damien, every twisted bit and calculated lie you spin is a dagger in our family's heart. Our legacy is bleeding a secret that will shatter us all, my words crackling with fury. He replied coolly, and your raging defiance only reveals your own complicity. A truth as fatal as the leak already condemning our empire, his tone cutting deeper than any blade. Chapter 1. Rifts and Rumors. Elena stepped through the wrought iron gates of the family estate, as dusk settled, the fading light casting long, twisting shadows across the manicured lawns. Each step on the cobblestones echoed with memories, both tender and turbulent, a mix of nostalgia and dread. She had returned not merely as a daughter reclaiming her ancestral home, but as a force unwilling to let deceit and manipulation shape her destiny. The whispered scandals in the corridors and hushed conversations among the staff had traveled faster than the wind, and now, with every rustle of the ancient oak trees lining the entrance, a sense of unrest began to settle within her. Inside the grand entry hall, ornate with faded paintings and gilded details that hinted at a bygone opulence, Elena felt the weight of unspoken secrets. Gowns once glittering at family gatherings had long been replaced with the subtle armor of resolve, a quiet anger toward those who manipulated every conversation for their own gain. She paused by a tall mirror, its surface reflecting a determined woman whose eyes shone with both pain and an unyielding will to confront the truth. In that moment, the rumors that had haunted her return crystallized into the realization that behind the family smiles lay a web of hidden agendas and betrayal. Her heart pounded as she made her way towards the drawing room, where the atmosphere buzzed with cautious politeness and purposeful ambiguity. It was here that the first subtle encounter with her step-sibling, Damien, unfolded. He had always exuded a quiet, calculating demeanor, a man who measured his words as if they were pieces on a chessboard. Their eyes met from across the room. His gaze was calm and penetrating, as though he were evaluating every hidden nuance of her much sooner than she herself was prepared to reveal. There was no overt hostility, just an unspoken acknowledgement that beneath their shared bloodline lay a rivalry simmering with secret resentments and veiled alliances. Damien's presence served as both a reassurance and a warning. His mere physical proximity in a room of restless courtiers and distant relatives was a reminder that every smile and handshake carried ulterior motives. As the night advanced, the family members spoke in a series of half-truths and careful insinuations. The air was thick with tension, stirred by recent whispers of an impending estate auction, a move that would not only affect the family's legacy, but the vast business interests carefully built over decades. Business turbulence, rumors of financial mismanagement, and the possibility of external manipulations had set the stage for what promised to be an explosive confrontation. Over dinner, the softly lit dining hall became an arena of subtle power plays. Elena could taste the bitterness in every carefully crafted toast and every forced polite laughter. Even the long, well-worn table seemed to bear the scars of past betrayals. Faint hints of a major secret, one that could upend the carefully constructed facade of the family empire, flitted across conversations. A misplaced remark here, an uneasy glance there, and Elena's mind raced through possibilities. Who was orchestrating these rumors? And more importantly, why did it feel as though the machinations were closer to home than anyone was willing to admit? Between courses, as the conversation ebbed and flowed from casual reminiscence to pointed inquiries about estate matters, Elena's internal struggle deepened. The manipulative tactics deployed by those around her were not new, yet this time the stakes were unbearably high. Every gesture, every word delivered with calculated precision, ignited in her a simmering anger that threatened to boil over. As a child, she had felt protected by the familial bonds, but now those bonds seemed interwoven with treachery and ambition. The betrayal was as palpable as the chill that crept beneath the skin on a cold autumn night. Taking solace in a brief respite on a veranda overlooking the estate's expansive grounds, Elena allowed herself a moment of introspection. The quiet night, punctuated by the distant hum of the city and the rustle of leaves, offered a temporary escape from the relentless tide of suspicions and half-truths. She revisited her earliest memories of laughter and light within these walls, contrasting them sharply with the murky undertones of present realities. With each breath of the cool night air, she reaffirmed her determination to cut through the layers of deceit, no matter how deeply entrenched they were in familiar faces. It was a promise she made to herself, never again to be the pawn in someone else's game. As Elena prepared to return indoors, her eyes met Damien's once more in a brief, charged moment. In the soft glow of the veranda light, his features were etched with an expression that was both inscrutable and intense. In that flicker of a glance, she sensed his own internal battle, a careful calculation to balance loyalty, self-interest, and perhaps a reluctant desire to uphold the family's dignity, even as it crumbled around them. Their silent exchange conveyed more than words ever could, hinting at both an alliance and an inevitable collision of wills. It was a reminder that in the intricate dance of familial obligations and personal ambitions, nothing was ever as simple as it appeared. Inside, amidst the subtle clinks of fine silverware and low murmurs of dissent, rumors continued to weave their intricate tapestry. Conversation started from subdued anxieties about the future of the business to the furtive question of the estate auction itself. Elena listened intently, each hushed word adding a new layer to the dark puzzle. She realized that the auction was not merely a financial event, but a turning point, a potential catalyst for exposing hidden misdeeds and reconfiguring the power structure that had long defined her family. That thought was both exhilarating and terrifying, fueling her resolve to get to the bottom of the deceit while guarding herself against further manipulation. When the evening's formalities wound down and most guests retired to secluded corners of the estate, Elena retreated to the library, a room that had once been a sanctuary of solace during turbulent times. There, surrounded by heavy leather-bound tomes and the comforting scent of aged paper, she allowed herself a few moments to process the evening's events. Flickering candlelight accentuated the determined set of her jaw as she mulled over the implications of every conversation, every glance, and every subtle shift in demeanor. She became more aware of the stakes at play, the looming auction, the subtle machinations of family members, and the major secret that lurked in the background, threatening to shatter the illusory peace of the estate. In the quiet solitude of that venerable room, Elena resolved that she would not be driven to despair by the forces arrayed against her. Every act of manipulation, every carefully guarded secret, would eventually be exposed under the relentless scrutiny of truth. Even as the dark carnival of betrayal spun around her, she felt a fierce inner strength swell, a determination to stand her ground and reclaim her narrative from those who sought to exploit it. It was a pledge born of years of lingering hurt and simmering indignation, a promise that no hidden agenda would succeed in undermining what she held dear. Yet, even as resolve took root, the chill of treachery gnawed at the corners of her mind. Among whispers of business mismanagement and family conflicts, one name had intermittently surfaced, linked to the secret that now seemed poised to upend everything Elena had known. Although still shrouded in mystery, the implication was clear. The forthcoming auction might serve as the final crack in the facade, forcing the revelation of truths long suppressed. The weight of that potential revelation pressed upon her, a reminder that the ties that bound her, both familial and financial, were perilously fragile. By the time the last amber of twilight surrendered to the night, Elena felt no longer like a returning daughter, but a warrior arming herself for the battles ahead. Her mind raced with strategies and contingencies as she considered the next steps in a game where every move was laced with risk and every alliance was tenuous at best. In those solemn hours, as the estate lay silent around her, Elena vowed that she would ride out the coming storm with the same relentless fire that had burned within her all along. The rifts and rumors that had greeted her return were merely the prelude to the upheavals to come, a reckoning that promised to expose every carefully concealed secret, and in doing so, ultimately redefine the meaning of family and honor. Chapter 2. Secrets in the Shadows. The day began with an unsettling stillness as Elena woke to news of a leaked critical business secret in her family's conglomerate. Whispers of betrayal filled the halls, signaling a calculated act of sabotage targeting a pivotal project. An emergency board meeting was called, exposing the family's vulnerability and igniting tension. In the glass-walled conference room, Elena confronted familiar faces clouded with worry and anger. A family elder broke the silence, demanding accountability for the betrayal. Suspicion grew, especially toward Elena's step-sibling, Victor, whose calm demeanor masked deeper ambitions. Their shared history of rivalry and unspoken resentments resurfaced, casting doubt on his loyalty. The senior executive urged the group to rebuild trust and hold members accountable. Elena's resolve strengthened as the investigation revealed the leak's potential to dismantle reputations and loyalties. Victor's defensive tone only fueled Elena's suspicion and anger. As admissions and retractions unfolded, Elena's voice cut through the noise, challenging the room's integrity. Her words echoed in the tense silence, exposing the personal ambitions that threatened family unity. Memories of past trust and betrayal weighed heavily on her, as each revelation felt like deliberate ruin. A dossier was presented, confirming suspicions of internal sabotage involving key players. Accusations flew as guilt spread among family members. Elena's emotions surged, anger, betrayal, and sadness intertwined as she vowed to confront the architect of this betrayal, likely Victor. Locking eyes with him, Elena saw the weight of exposed secrets reflected in Victor's face. The room paused in uneasy truce, their shared history now threatened by further division. As the meeting ended, Elena remained, absorbing the fracture in her life. Determined to confront the intimate betrayals within her family, she stepped into the night, resolved to dismantle the labyrinth of secrets and lies. The night promised battles ahead, but Elena knew the path to reclaiming what was lost lay in unveiling the shadow's secrets with the blaze of truth. Chapter 3. The Price of Deceit. The grand ballroom of the family estate shimmered with uneasy candlelight as the auction began, thick with tension and whispers of old grudges. Elena stood at the center, her heart pounding as the auctioneer's voice failed to mask the oppressive atmosphere. Each bid unraveled layers of deception, transforming the estate from a symbol of heritage to a stage for bitter truths. As the bidding war escalated, whispers grew louder, and Elena recalled the manipulations and alliances of recent months. The gossamer threads of lies were tearing away, revealing raw realities. A sudden outburst from Julian, her step-sibling and once trusted confidant, accused a family member of swindling the legacy, his voice strained with anger and betrayal. Elena felt a churn of emotions as accusations flew. Julian's hostility mirrored her internal conflict, a tempest of loyalty and betrayal. The auction floor became a battleground, each accusation an arrow aimed at unveiling deception. Julian confronted Elena, his expression shifting from anger to vulnerability. "How long were you complicit in all of this?" he demanded. The question pierced Elena's defenses. She could no longer deny her guilt. "You knew exactly what was at stake," she replied, her voice edged with betrayal. The onlookers sensed this was no mere spat, but a defining moment, and silence fell as tension mounted between them. Julian stepped closer, eyes searching Elena's for remnants of love. "I did what I thought was right," he hissed, voice raw. "But now here we are, drowning in consequences." Time seemed to halt as unresolved desire and regret mingled beneath unsaid words, blurring lines between loyalty and self-interest. Caught in the torrent of emotions, Elena mirrored Julian's anguish. With a sudden motion, Julian closed the gap, their faces so close that betrayal and forgiveness became indistinguishable. In that instant, a passionate kiss ignited between them, laden with guilt and longing, a desperate attempt at redemption. It was not born solely of desire, but carried the weight of hidden truths and mischances. Around them, the room erupted in shocked gasps, yet time slowed for them. The fervor of the kiss drowned out chaos, a plea for understanding. But reality clawed back as a senior family member called an emergency meeting, a jarring reminder that the auction's fallout couldn't be escaped by a baleful embrace. In the stark meeting room, undeniable truths were laid bare. Julian's earlier declaration echoed, haunting both him and Elena. Confessions mounted, revealing the cost of deceit, a toll paid in lost honor and broken promises. The kiss symbolized that beneath the deceit, genuine emotion remained. As the meeting concluded, the family grappled with their collective fall. Elena and Julian stood at a crossroads, forced to confront the intricate bonds of love and betrayal. Exiting into the night, Elena felt the cool air, a reminder of the unforgiving world outside. Her heart throbbed with the kiss's remnants, a bittersweet reminder of hope amidst shattered dreams. Stepping into an uncertain future, Elena and Julian carried scars of past misdeeds and the possibility of forgiveness. In that singular moment between passion and confession, a new chapter in their tumultuous journey quietly began. Chapter 4. New Beginnings from Broken Trust. The heavy air of consequence still lingered as Arya found herself alone in the quiet of the drawing room, the remnants of the public upheaval echoing in every corner of her mind. The auction, with all its orchestrated chaos and unforeseen revelations, had left a mark too deep to ignore. It had not merely exposed secrets, it had compelled everyone involved to confront the raw truth of their choices. Now, in the silence that followed, Arya's inward journey began, a slow, deliberate passage from seething anger to a cautious embrace of forgiveness. The matter was not simple or easily mended. Moments after the auction, an emergency meeting had been called, urging several family members to face the havoc sown by deception. In that charged atmosphere, voices had raised, accusations hurled in both passion and desperation. But within that storm emerged unexpected clarity. Arya recognized her own complicity in a game of power and manipulation, acknowledging that in defending herself, she had unwittingly contributed to the very betrayal that now disconnected her from those she cared about. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door, the quiet, hesitant sound that had become the precursor to many of her life-changing moments. It was Julian, her step-sibling, whose presence had always been both a balm and a challenge. Today his usual composed expression carried a tint of vulnerability rarely seen. As he stepped into the room, the distance between them felt charged with something new, an unspoken willingness to share the burden of past transgressions and sketch a path toward a gentler future. Julian's calculated demeanor was tempered by the weight of regret. It was this emerging softness that gave Arya hope that perhaps through mutual understanding, some semblance of wholeness might be reclaimed. They had both played roles in a tragedy of sorts, each methodically navigating family loyalty and ambition, only to find that their carefully constructed facades were unsustainable in the face of unmasked truth. In that stark moment, Arya could see the fissures in Julian's armor as clearly as her own. Seated near the window, where the early afternoon light spattered the room in muted golds, Julian began by recounting his perspective. His voice, at once steady and haunted, spoke of his initial intent, to steer events to a controlled outcome that would preserve the family honor. Yet, as he confessed how his plans had spiraled into something far darker than he'd intended, a palpable remorse filled the small space between them. "I lost sight of what was truly important," he admitted, his eyes lingering on something beyond Arya, a regret that seemed almost too heavy for words. Arya listened, her inner anger and grief softening into reluctant understanding. She recalled the countless evenings filled with silent brooding and the barbed remarks exchanged in moments of vulnerability. But as Julian's words reached her, she began to see the intricacies of his own struggle, the burden of expectation, the pull of ambition, and the crushing sorrow of realizing he too had been far from perfect. It was in that dim, reflective space that she recognized a fellow soul marred by choices that, while unintended, had inflicted deep wounds on both of them. Earlier, in the wake of the auction, Arya had felt as if the world had split in two, a reckoning where the lines between ally and adversary blurred. The public exposure of their secrets had forced her to sift through layers of guilt and bitterness, unearthing a profound internal conflict. Should she remain entrenched in despair, or could she rise above the circumstance that had almost shattered her identity? Choosing the latter, she had begun to peel back the layers of resentment, seeking instead a mature acceptance that even those who hurt her were, in their own complicated ways, seeking redemption. Julian sat opposite her, his eyes meeting hers with an honest yearning for change. His earlier demeanor, always so cool and precise, now revealed the raw humanity behind the guise of control. His voice, when it spoke again, was quiet yet resolute. "I understand now that my actions, meant to steer us forward, only drove us into deeper conflict, and for that, I am sorry, not only for the harm I caused, but for losing the chance to trust in our bond." His apology, though simple, resonated deeply with Arya. It was as if the ghosts of past errors were lifting, replaced by the tender possibility of genuine connection. The memory of previous betrayals, once so vivid and unyielding, now allowed space for a kind of forgiveness that was both brave and transformative. In that mutating silence, the initial shock of exposure gave way to a slow burning interest in reconciling what had been broken. The conversation unfolded carefully, echoing the many times they had hidden behind careful words and closed doors. They acknowledged that while the auction had pulled back the veil of secrecy, it had also unmasked the pain that both had long endured. Each confessed fragments of vulnerability that had lived in the shadows of pride and duty. Arya, speaking softly, admitted that she too had held on to anger out of a desire to protect herself from further betrayal. Yet now she wished to embrace the possibility of moving beyond the tit-for-tat that had imprisoned them in cycles of mutual distrust. In that slow, reflective heart-to-heart, the room seemed to contract around them, shrinking the distance between their disparate worlds. The residual tension of the emergency meeting mingled with the intimacy of their shared admissions, culminating in a moment that demanded action. As the conversation matured, Julian reached out a tentative yet enduring gesture, and Arya, with both arms and heart open, reciprocated. In that embrace, layered with all the scars of former misdeeds, as well as the promise of renewal, they found solace. It wasn't a sweeping miracle that absolved every past misstep, but rather a careful, deliberate choice to rebuild trust brick by brick. For a long moment, neither spoke. Their silence was filled with the weight of remembered pain and the lighter, yet no less powerful, prospect of a future where understanding had replaced manipulation. The kiss that soon followed was equally tender and resolute, a physical embodiment of their commitment to face the future together. It was a kiss that acknowledged all that had been lost, and all that might yet be salvaged, filled with the hope that moving forward together was worth every risk. In that final act of reconnection, both Arya and Julian forged a pact not merely to forgive each other, but to actively nurture the vulnerability that had been exposed by their shared mistakes. Their hands remained locked as they slowly separated, leaving behind the bitter residues of their past. It was a promise not to deny the pain that had led them to this watershed moment, but rather to weave it into a new fabric of trust and mutual respect. Beyond the recently mended confines of that room lay an uncertain external world, still reeling from the fallout of deception and betrayal. Yet within the margins of this intimate space, two souls had found solace in the simple truth that while trust might once be broken, it could also be remade, refined by time and tempered by genuine remorse. As the day slipped into the quiet blue of early evening, Arya stood by the window once again, allowing her thoughts to settle on the events that had redefined her inner landscape. The vivid reminders of the auction and the emergency meeting would remain part of her story, potent lessons of what must be overcome in order to begin anew. In the closing moments of that transformative day, Arya spotted Julian standing in the doorway, a gentle smile playing at the corners of his lips, a silent acknowledgement of the past and a promise for the future. With no further need for words, she reached out and intertwined her fingers with his. The combined strength of their shared resolve was palpable, a quiet declaration that from the wreckage of shattered trust and painful public humiliation, something profoundly heartfelt could emerge. It was a promise that despite the echoes of betrayal, the process of healing was within reach, a journey they would undertake side by side, and one that redefined what it meant to truly love and forgive. The chapter of broken trust was closing, but in its place, a new narrative of redemption and eligibility for second chances had begun to write itself. A narrative that promised not a swift erasure of the past, but a progressive, human rebuilding of what had once seemed irrevocably lost. In that new dawn, Arya and Julian stepped forward as partners in both struggle and joy, their final, heartfelt kiss sealing their shared commitment to navigate the uncertain terrain.